Hello, YouTube. This is Max. Welcome to this DebateCraft production. Today, I am super excited to welcome to our first ever quick fire debate. This is a new series on DebateCraft that will feature a broad topic, and then you'll hear a pro and con side of a specific resolution within that topic. So very quickly, you should hear both sides of an issue, and I hope you'll be entertained and informed by this format, and we are very excited to bring it to you today and hopefully many times in the future. If you would like to do this yourself, visit DebateCraft.com and join our community, and you too can be featured in our videos. I am honored today to be joined by Whiteflame and Savant. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's do this. The first topic on the docket today is qualified immunity is required for an effective police force. Whiteflame, you are pro on this topic? Go right ahead.
When you hear qualified immunity, what comes to mind? I see a shield, one there to protect a group that puts themselves in harm's way regularly. They are our first line of defense against violent criminals, forced to make split-second decisions in high-stress situations. And as a nation and as a world, we've sought to protect them from the additional burdens that come from frivolous lawsuits filed after the fact. This is not to say that police should never be tried for what they do in the line of duty, but the standard for trying them should be high. There must be a clear legal basis for filing such a lawsuit. This is how we ensure more officers stay on the streets doing what they do best without hesitation. This is how we ensure that courts can focus on the cases that matter most and bring them to an effective and swift conclusion. With that, I propose.
Thank you very much, Whiteflame. Savant, what say you?
So what makes a police force effective? Ideally, they would be deterring crime and keeping the public safe. This idea that qualified immunity is required for an effective police force is just demonstrably false. The concept of qualified immunity wasn't even introduced by the Supreme Court until 1967, and what happened after that? Violent crime rates spiked in the United States, and they are still higher today than they were in the 1950s. The homicide rate in 1950 was about 4.6 per 100,000, while recent data shows it's about 6.0 per 100,000 today, and obviously qualified immunity is not the only factor here, but that's not the point. The point is that we have examples of effective police forces that don't have qualified immunity, which directly disproves the resolution. We don't even have to look to the past. New Zealand has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. The police there do not have qualified immunity. Iceland has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. The police there do not have qualified immunity. The police in Iceland have a high public trust at 77.5%. In fact, they are the most trusted institution in Iceland. So by any metric, Iceland's police force does not require public immunity to be effective. Qualified immunity to be effective. Now, maybe other factors make it easier for the police there. Maybe it's not as difficult for them to keep the public safe, but clearly the police in New Zealand and Iceland are as effective as they need to be, at least compared to the average nation. And we cannot say the same for the United States. Qualified immunity is mostly unique to the United States, and yet the U.S. homicide rate is significantly higher than in other high-income and developed nations.
Thank you very much, Savant. For the next topic, it is as follows. Defunding the police and reallocating those funds would be net beneficial. Savant, you are first.
So the slogan defund the police, I think, is widely understood to encompass a wide range of proposals, from simply reducing police funding to complete abolition. The policy I defend here will not be the abolition of the police. Instead, I will be advocating for reallocation of a portion of funding to create a program similar to Denver's STAR program throughout the United States. Now, STAR is a community response program that dispatches a two-person team, one paramedic and one medical health clinician, to non-violent 911 calls. So, for example, they would respond to mental health crisis, substance use, homelessness, and other non-criminal cases. A study from Stanford University found that in the precincts where STAR operated, there was a 34% reduction in reports of low-level crimes. They also found no increase in reports of more serious crimes. And furthermore, the program was cost-effective. A typical police response to a 911 call cost approximately $646, while a STAR response call cost only $151. And STAR handled a total of 750 incidents that would have taken up police time, freeing up the police to handle more serious issues. Now, because STAR is so cost-effective, it would free up a lot of money for the budget, which would then be spent to increase funding to programs that reduce recidivism. To give one example, the Becoming a Man initiative developed by Youth Guidance provides counseling to young men at a high risk of violence. The University of Chicago Crime Lab found that this program had a benefit to cost ratio from 5-to-1 to as high as 30-to-1 from reduction in crime alone. It also increased on-time high school graduation rates by 19%, and the resulting increases in future earnings would further increase the return on investment. And for those reasons, I think this proposal would clearly be net beneficial if implemented, and satisfies the resolution.
Thank you, Savant. Whiteflame, you are con on this topic. Go ahead.
Let's not kid ourselves. If we're dealing with this on a broader scale than the one that suggests, we're talking about defining the police as a social experiment, one where every one of us will be subject to the errors and imbalances in the process. This is particularly relevant for the vast majority of us in how it affects police response times. These funds are necessarily going to go to other groups, which means they have to be drawn away from police forces. Even if it leads to some benefit later in time, those police forces are going to be depleted of funding right now. And that means whether that leads to staffing shortages or a lack of necessary resources and training, that redirection of funds will make police less effective at everything they do, which will mainly affect those areas that already have major shortcomings. Areas like rural areas, rural parts of the country with limited funds, and cities that already stretch their budgets way too thin, especially if they have huge crime statistics. A lack of police presence will also result in less deterrence, as more crime will go unsolved and unpunished as fewer police officers can be assigned to those cases, and it will lead to a cycle of increasing crime that will further stretch dwindling budgets and erode public confidence in law enforcement.
Thank you both for your views on that topic. Next, we have police presence improves campus safety. Whiteflame, you are pro?
If the many school shootings blanketing the news tell us anything, it's that we have work to do when it comes to protecting children in these most vulnerable of spaces. Part of managing that is recognizing the need for police officers who know how and are prepared to handle dangerous people entering school campuses. That requires two things: recognition that police are that effective resource because they're by necessity trained for that instance, and that having them on campuses proactively, specifically ahead of anything happening, makes their capacity to ensure school safety much simpler and quicker. Not only are they present and prepared when needed, but they build relationships with students and teachers on those campuses, preventing conflicts from escalating internally, deterring criminal activity, and ensuring that people feel safe to report to police officers when they need to. With that, I propose.
Thank you, Whiteflame. Savant, you are con?
Yes, so what does it mean for a campus to be safe? Well, I think that students should have the right not to be discriminated against. I think they should have the right to not be punished disproportionately, and most importantly, not to have their futures harmed. These are all forms of harm, and I think that to be safe, students should be protected from all the abuses I mentioned. A recent study published in the Journal of Policy Analysis and Management found that schools with police presence saw between a 35 and 80% increase in out-of-school suspensions, as well as a 25 to 90% increase in expulsions. The increases in disciplinary and police actions were consistently largest for Black students, male students, and students with disabilities. Black students were also disproportionately likely to be assaulted by school police. In fact, more than 80% of students who have been assaulted by school police since 2011 have been Black. Researchers from Johns Hopkins Medicine reviewed 40 years of scientific studies looking at the impact of police contact with Black youth in numerous environments, and they concluded that such exposure may be detrimental to the health and well-being of this group, including negative outcomes such as sadness, hopelessness, anger, and, sure enough, fear for safety. Furthermore, a study published in the Office of Justice Programs found that during mass shootings, when other factors are controlled for, the rate of deaths was 2.83 times greater in schools with an armed guard present. One particularly infamous example of police failing to improve campus safety was during the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. One safety official reported that the gunman could have been stopped within 3 minutes had the situation been handled properly. Instead, police waited for over an hour outside classrooms and prevented adults from entering the school to try to stop the gunman.
Thank you so much, Whiteflame and Savant, for your thoughts on each of those topics. This has been a DebateCraft production. Thank you so much for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a wonderful day.